I like making colorful artwork and painting or digital art. I also like writing stories. Sometimes they're fun stories, sometimes they're serious political stories. I've been teaching for 16 years now. The first 4 years was in early childhood, and the next 12 years was in primary. So 6 of those years as a class teacher, and 6 of those years was as a visual arts teacher. I also like making funny characters and comics in my own time. So that's a little bit about me. That's my Twitter handle there, Chris Gadbury, if you want to tweet at any time. Okay, so here we are, 9 ways to become a super creative teacher. So the first thing is see your limitations as creative opportunities. Okay, so there's a little animation made on Procreate. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about animation, but I think perhaps it was pretty clear what I was trying to say is that we all have limitations. And sometimes if we use creativity, we can get past these limitations. And sometimes the limitations even help us. So you can see that the car was able to fly across the sky because it was able to build a ramp. Okay, so here, instead of thinking about all the things you can't do, think about the things that you can, that you couldn't do before. So we've all gone through online learning. It's been a struggle, but there's also been a lot of new things that we've been able to do. So for me, teaching visual arts, I was able to ask the students to use materials from around the home, which are obviously going to be different from the materials we use at school. I was able to give them more time to spend on tasks. So we have about 1 hour usually for lessons per week. And some of the students wanted to spend the weekend doing their art projects. So it was great. So I was able to give them a lot more opportunities to spend time on their work. We can also let go of control because it's very, very difficult to not try and direct them in a certain way. So give them more agency. And also there's always an issue of space when you're a teacher, keeping big work in the school. You've got to have somewhere to keep it. But when they're doing it at home, you don't have to worry about that. So here we go. I'm going to show you a few examples of some of the activities. So this is how I plan lessons. I use lots of photographs, lots of visuals. This is like a typical lesson plan for me. So I will show you a bit about the lesson now. So I was able to do a lot of demonstrations, a lot of videos, and encourage them to use things that they found around the home, toothpicks, cardboard, and make things. Another thing I was able to do was get them interested in fashion design. So I gave them a template that they were able to print out and then cut out, and then they could use things around the home, little bits of fabric, maybe candy wrappers, paper, all sorts of things. And what they do is they put these things behind the template and they're able to come up with some fashion design. So this is something that would be difficult to do at school just because everyone's work would look pretty similar because obviously there's a limit the different fabrics that we can provide. Another thing was pop art. So I was able to show them my cupboard, obviously very exciting. But for them, it is quite exciting seeing the teacher's kitchen. And they were able to find around the home and turn them into pop art. So, sorry, I've just got a message saying my connection is unstable.
That's okay, Chris. We can
Yeah.
hear you.
Still there?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Uh,
If you could actually just move your cursor away from the screen, because we are getting a few messages saying we can see the play bar. There you go. Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Okay, so here we go. Another thing was being able to use your toys. Okay, so I got the kids to design little tiny artworks on Post-it notes, and they then set up their own little art gallery. And I can tell you a lot of theirs looked better than mine did. Really fun activity for them to do. Okay, so another way I have limitations is that I am not sort of an IT person. I have very little experience making videos, if I'm being honest, but there are certain ways around that, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So a lot of the time, I will film the screen, and here's an example of how I can make things doing really basic using really basic sort of methods to create things to make my videos look more interesting. So what I did here was I just simply cut out the letters for my blog. It's called artlesson.blog. So I simply cut them out and put them on the table, and then I filmed it, and then I just blew them away with my mouth. So you can. Now, what happens if you put that? Okay, it comes together. Okay, so looks kind of cool. Another thing you can do is use the green screen. So if you use an iPad and you use a green screen, you can actually use Procreate, a program that's really simple to use, and come up with different animations, just like 2-second animations, and you can incorporate that into your videos. So if you want to make them, I'll just rewind a tiny bit. If you want to make them walk or seem like they're moving across the screen, then use a big screen and then set it up so that you start over here and you end over here. That's using iMovie, and iMovie is something that you will already have on your MacBook. There are obviously better programs or more advanced programs to use. I don't use them because I'm not that advanced. So here we go. So it's very simple to do, and it makes it look like he's walking across the screen. Although the only thing that's moving is actually the screen, like that. So start to. Okay, to make his voice, it's just me going do 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 do, and then I speed it up just a little bit to make it high pitched. Okay, another thing, if you want to put a little symbol in the corner of your videos, then again use the green screen, and here we go. So that's what iMovie looks like, and then just put it on top of your video. So you just make one layer. I think iMovie you can only use one layer. You can only make 2 layers. Sorry, you can only make 2 layers. So you can move this and put it on the top, and then I'll just show you. It's really easy. Click there. Go to green screen. Okay, and you'll see now. Walk across. Okay, so we talked about how limitations can be creative opportunities. So that's the case in Zoom, and that's the case during online learning. But it can also be the case in your own personal life as well. So here that are personal limitations for myself. So one of them is public speaking. I have always been really, really nervous doing public speaking. And I'll talk about how I sort of got better at that. Obviously, I still get nervous sometimes, but it used to be so terrible to do public speaking at all. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Remembering information, remembering lines, which I find very difficult. If I'm to do a presentation and I've written lines and I'm supposed to memorize them, I find it impossible. And not being musical. I am not musical at all. So I will talk a little bit more about these things. So there we go. Okay, so not remembering information, I started doing sketchnoting, which really helped me to not only remember things, but also to pay attention. So when you're drawing and drawing out ideas, it really helps you to listen and to stay focused to that. And I used the same sort of approach and I created this graphic. So some of you may have seen this before. And basically, when I first started learning about the IB, when I first joined an IB school, I found it so difficult to remember all these new words, new vocabularies, and new concepts and approaches to learning, and to memorize all this and to be able to talk about it with students and things like that. So I thought, well, there's got to be an easier way of doing this. And so when making the enhanced PYP the enhanced PYP came out, then I'd already, gotten everything because I'd been doing it for quite a few years. But then I thought about all the new PYP teachers that were just joining, and they would probably have the same issues as me. So what I decided to do is to put it all together into one document. Yeah, it did quite well. It took off, and it's being used in lots of schools around the world. So it's the same sort of approach, limitations and creative opportunities. Okay, so the next one, remembering lines. Now, early last year, I was invited to do a TEDx talk, and I was invited to do it for 12 minutes. So a TEDx talk is typically 12 minutes. Now, I was really worried because I was thinking, how am I going to remember 12 minutes of information? And how am I going to present that? And so I thought, well, I want to talk about how I write stories because that's something that I do. But how am I going to do that for 12 minutes? So I decided, well, what if I wrote it as a story and told it as a story? So I made a story which was a real story about myself, and I told the audience the story through a picture book. And I was able to read the words, and it came across quite well. So these are the pictures that I used, and I had words underneath. And it's something I think, well, I've never seen it before during a TEDx talk or a TED talk or anything. So I think it was something original. And I think people maybe appreciated that I was doing something else. So another way to use your limitations for creative opportunities. So I didn't mention the stand-up comedy. We've written a blog post for Toddle. Basically, I explain it more there. But one thing, getting over the nerves and the anxiety of public speaking, I just sort of went straight for it and signed up for some stand-up comedy, sort of open mic nights. And it was terrifying. But after doing it several times, the next time I had to present at a teaching event, the butterflies were almost gone because I didn't have the pressure of having to make people laugh. All I had to do was present the information. So yeah, it's kind of like diving in the deep end of the pool to get over your fear. Yeah, okay. And finally, as I said, I'm not musical at all. I love musicals. Every time I go to London, I go see a musical. And so I decided I wanted to write a story where everything rhymes. And so I wrote a story called The Rapper Pillar about a caterpillar who wants to be a rapper. but everyone says you can't because you're going to grow up and be a butterfly. So I'll show you a little clip from the story. So this is the cover of the story, and you can watch it on YouTube.
Beneath the branches of garden trees stood a tiny school made from sticks and leaves for slugs and bugs and six-legged creatures with wings and stings and extraordinary features.
Okay, so then he goes inside a cocoon and he comes out, and he is now a rapper.
This is hip-hop, my communication, spreading my words like pollination. This is how we do it. I'm loud like a cricket, 2 arms, 4 legs, show I can kick it.
Okay, so see your limitations as creative opportunities. Now, I love writing stories and I love doing the illustrations, but it takes a very long time, especially doing the illustrations. So what I decided to do was to write stories, but use much simpler sort of drawings. So these characters, I came up with this whole sort of universe of characters, and they are made of shapes. So triangle people, square people, and circle people. And my stories are about global issues, and I try and align them with the global goals. So you can see here a few examples of the stories. Again, you can see them on my website, which is magicstorybooks.com. Okay, we're going to take a little pause. So perhaps you've got some ideas. Perhaps there's something you want to try in your classroom. If you want to take just maybe 1 minute and maybe any ideas that have come to mind or things you want to share, you're welcome to share those in the chat box.
All right, I see a lot of people loving the ideas that you've shared, the rapper pillar especially. Leonard was wondering how we could use these ideas for something like teaching math, for example. So any strategies for that? And yeah, we'll do this first.
Okay, sure. I'll just talk about math. So later on, what I've shown you so far are mostly to do with being an art teacher, but I also, half of my career has been as a class teacher as well. Later on, I will go into more detail in maths and English and some of my favorite activities that I've done there. So,
perfect.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for that. We have a question here. Manisha asked, what is the skill that's required to create these digital resources?
Okay, so, I mean, the best way to learn something is through playing, I find. I know people that use Procreate that they're not, you know, they don't have a background in arts or graphic design, and they're able to pick it up pretty fast. It just depends. If you really want to learn something and you play around with it, you know, you'll get it eventually. So I don't think there's like a huge level. All the programs that I'm showing you aren't something you need to have some sort of degree in or qualification, and you can learn them by just playing around. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm getting, Sangeeta says that fashion design, pop art, art gallery, using sticky notes, all of these ideas she's taking to the classroom, and she's really loving the session so far. And yeah, a lot of people are actually asking where you could find the shape stories, Chris. So if you could share your website name one more time.
Sure, it's magicstorybooks.com.
All right, and I will also drop the link in the chat box in just 1 minute. Pratima has been very patient. She had this question in the first few minutes of you sharing the sketchnote template, and feel free to tell me that we might talk about this slightly later, but she's wondering why we use a dotted sheet for sketchnoting.
Okay, there's a little section on sketchnoting. The dotted sheet helps if you are a sort of a beginner in sketchnoting and maybe drawings, not something you feel that comfortable with. So it helps you just to follow lines, to make straight lines without using a ruler. It also helps, I use dots as well, like when I'm doing lettering. If you use an iPad to do sketch notes, then you can actually put dots there and then make them disappear anyway. So I always do that when I do sketchnoting because it helps me keep lettering straight. Otherwise, I sort of write, crooked and things like that. So it just helps to keep things straight. It's not essential that you use it. Maybe you're much better than I am at drawing and writing straight. So it's up to you.
Perfect. All right. We have Claire who shared her limitation. So she says, my limitation would be the larger cohort that I have. I teach 450 students pop visual arts, and I'm already reframing it by seeing the potential for large collaborations. So this is great. I'm so glad that she's finding this valuable.
Good. Thank you for that. Yeah, I also teach 420 students. So I can relate. Yeah, it can be difficult, especially when you're in class and when you're in school and you've got to provide 400 cardboard boxes or whatever. That's a lot of cereal you've got to eat. So yeah, it's kind of it can be beneficial that they're at home and you don't have to collect all these things. It can there are good points to it as well. Okay, I think we're about quarter way through and we're halfway through our time. So shall I move on a little bit?
Yes, that's
okay. Okay, thanks. All right. Okay, so next one, know what's cool, then be a massive dork. Something I have a lot of experience in, not knowing what's cool, but being a massive dork. So I green screen everything. Here's an example. So obviously I don't have a high budget Hollywood studio. I just use a green sheet in my art room, my little office. And so you can see here that I have just put the green screen on top of the other video. And then
the first thing that I found was a tissue. The next thing that I found was some Lego. The next thing I found was a plug. Then I found some liquid soap. And finally, I found a remote control.
So there's a lot of green screen. So again, using green screens, and I will try and move the play button so you can see. But basically here I'm using Procreate again, and I'm just making a simple animation. And so how I'm doing this is I've made the background green so that I can easily save it and then put it on top of iMovie. And this is just several layers, which you do. So you just draw it bit by bit. And I'll show you. And all it's doing is it's flicking through the layers. So if you play with Procreate, you'll get the hang of this really easily. I'm sure that if you go online, there's probably loads of like sort of YouTube lessons that can teach you how to do it. So I won't go into too much detail. It's just making layers, and then it flicks through from one layer to another. And you'll see how I've used that later on. Another thing I've done is when we returned to school, so we were off school since February, and then just before the summer holidays, the children went back to school. And so I wanted to do sort of a reflection and find out what they know and what they've learned, and see if they understand the concepts in art. So I made a little story. I did bore them with, those reflections. So I made a little story and asked them to illustrate the story. So It was done in 3 parts. I'll just read the first one. So it says, in the magical land of Artistica, the skies were filled with patterns. It was the same with nearly everything in Artistica. Every mountain and tree was decorated from top to bottom with the most unusual kinds of patterns. Okay, so I would just read that to them, and I would get them to draw it to see if they understand patterns. And there was another one on shapes, and there was another one on tonal value. And so I provided a little video. Oops.
Hey, everybody.
Don't want to pause like that. I provided a little video of me being a massive dork, as I said, and just reading the story or showing them the story, but pretending that all the pictures had disappeared and then asking them to do the pictures.
Welcome back to school. I am so excited because I really wanted to read this book to you. And I love the front cover because the artwork is just Oh no.
Okay, that's a simple blank book that you can buy in Muji. So I just used that book, and they found it hilarious, obviously, because they actually believed that the pages had disappeared. Okay, so next one, be vulnerable and honest. Here we go. Okay, so the thing I have noticed in almost every school you go into, planning meetings, they take place in a classroom, normally on a computer, or everyone's looking at a computer, and they're normally filling in a Word document. Here we go. So what you have is a box, inside a box, inside a box. And you're asked to think outside of the box, which is insane. So this is one suggestion I would like to make. And this is a cardboard box. And this is how sometimes, if I am feeling uninspired, I will do my lesson plan on something else, like a cardboard box or packaging, and just scribble down ideas, because I find it very difficult to look at a Word document and come up with original ideas. So I also suggest changing location as well, and also change what you write with. So don't always type it out. Try using a fancy pen or colored pens, or I've used a bit of paint there as well. You can always take a photograph of what you've done. If you really have to type it in later, you can do that. But when you're brainstorming ideas, I always suggest changing location and definitely change what you write on. So there you go. Also, I like to share my lesson plans with people, so I often put them on my blog. I also make it available for all the staff in my school. So here you go. Here's how I keep them together. Okay, and there's all the documents, so everyone has access to those in school if they want to see what we're doing in art. When I write a story, I like to share the process of it, how I put it together, how I come up with characters. So all the things that lead up to it. This is how I create characters. So this is an illustration I did, which has been used by World's Largest Lesson. And I also like to make comic books. So this is sort of the process. This is the wrapper pillar. So some of the characters in there and how I came to draw them and how I came up with all the ideas and what they're going to look like. So I didn't just do it straight away. It took a long time to decide what each of the characters are going to look like. So we'll take another little break, 1 minute break. And if you have any thoughts, ideas, or things you want to share, you can do that in the box.
All right, to all the people who couldn't hear Chris properly, please let us know if you can hear him okay now, because we can. So yeah, otherwise I'll ask Chris to maybe talk a little bit, be a little louder. But yeah, I think a lot of people, yeah, they can hear you okay. A lot of people, Chris, have been loving the idea of using illustrations to check for prior knowledge and student understanding. That's been something that a lot of people have been sharing in the chat. And Sangeeta says thinking from inside the box to outside the box was a great idea. And she loved the fact that you used the cereal packaging box. That was amazing. Naomi says that she loves the Artistica book. It's a fantastic idea to get children to use different skills. Jenny says, just as our students process ideas, it's wonderful to hear your thoughts on giving teachers more agency too. This is amazing. Jennifer says, she thinks that this is amazing what you're sharing. And she also wants to know that whether the IB also loves your planning, which I think that the fact that we all use your sketch notes in our classroom says a lot. A lot of people actually are wondering what apps you use to record these videos. So if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Sure, okay. So most of the graphics that I've shown you so far have been done either on Adobe Illustrator, which has quite a steep learning curve. I wouldn't recommend, if you have no experience with graphics, I wouldn't recommend doing that right away unless that's something you really want to build on. But if you want to create sort of simple graphics and illustrations, then I'd recommend using Procreate on the iPad. And you can do animation on there as well. And you can also film your screen so that you can show the steps of what you're doing. Okay, should we move on? We got one more?
No.
Okay, sorry.
No, I was just also saying that you have shown us iMovie as well to edit. So to everybody who's asking what tools you use to edit these videos, it is iMovie, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Perfect. I think we're ready. We can move on.
Okay, so we're about halfway, and so I might have to talk a little faster now. Okay. So invite a creative and inclusive culture. Okay, so I like to show all students' work. So when there is, say, some sort of cover for the yearbook or something, I like to show everyone's work. So there always, I just feel that choosing one student kind of kills it for the other students. So there's an example there of the yearbook I did for the year 6 when they were leaving. And so everyone has their own little artwork that looks like it's on a badge on the yearbook. So just want something to keep in mind. Another thing I like to do is, my students were obsessed by Pokemon cards, and I wanted to make use of this. So what I did is I made collecting cards of all the teachers, and I put what their name was so the kids could learn the name, and asked the teachers to come up with some skills or knowledge that they have. So when the kids are doing inquiry, let's say they're doing it on travel, for example, they go, oh, you know what, I can check and see if any of the teachers have worked in travel. And one of the teachers was an airline hostess before, so they know exactly who to ask. So it's a great way to get kids to get to know the teachers. And I think teachers like to share their knowledge and experience with other classes as well. Another thing I did was a teacher art exhibition. So just something to have on the wall. Everyone has different skills. There are great photographers in your school, I'm sure. People who like to do fine art or pottery. Why not celebrate that? And why not put it up on the wall and allow the teachers to be a part of the creative community as well? Okay, so this is another thing I did collaborating with teachers and students together. So I came up with this template, which is just like a very simple man who's marching along, called Marching Man. And I left the template out in the staff room and handed it to the kids. It was optional if they wanted to create some at home or during break time, and they could come up with little characters. And then I collected them all together and made a little, put them in frames so they know their work is being valued. And so here's a collaboration of student work and teacher work. And those are some of my examples there. So you can see little characters I've done. And this is the template. So I would just print this out and leave it in the staff room. And there are loads of people, you know, doing them at home and stuff like that. Okay, we missed one. Think of the funnest possible way of learning something, and something is, and then do exactly that. So playing with shapes, a little video, and then I thought, well, how can I make this video more interesting? And so I decided to animate it a little, and I encouraged the kids to look at the shapes and think what they could be. Okay, here's a maths one. So someone was asking about maths earlier. So this is one of my favorite things to do with students. And what we do is we create a shop. So the students, they have a budget. I print out all this pretend money, and the students, they have to create a product. So their product was little paper friendship bracelets. And they go through sort of a business cycle. So they create a product, they have to set up a stall to sell it. Of course, not for real money, for fake money. We invite another class to come in and purchase these things. So they are given the fake money. And so they have to keep a record of profit and loss. So they have an accountant within the group. And these roles sort of come about organically. Someone who's really good at art tends to be the person who's in charge of making the bracelets. And this happens, again, organically through going around and around the cycle. Once they get to a stage where they have to present their work and as a shop. And then, so they learn about presentation, they learn about customer service, and so on. And as it goes around and people start to buy it, they start to analyze how can they improve upon their shop. What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? Should they spend more time on making the product good quality, or should they try and sell more product? And then they get to a stage where they go, you know what? We would like someone else to work for us. And so they start to offer other people in other groups to come and work for them. And they offer them to pay them more. And so offer them better benefits. So one group decided that they were not going to use chairs anymore. And so that they would save money, because everything that they use, they have to rent from me, who is the bank. And so they decided to save money, they weren't going to use chairs. But then the employees became unhappy. And so they started to want to move to other companies within the class. And so all these different business things are happening, all these different experiences, and they are analyzing it, and they start to come up with who's the boss and what are the different roles, and they're trying to encourage other people to come and work for them. And yeah, anyway, it's a great maths inquiry because I think that they really learn about different things that they wouldn't normally get to learn about until much later on in life. So that's a great activity to use. And it also looks a little bit like a sketch note. So I just drew over the top of it. And there you go. Okay. Okay, so making videos again, I'm going to show you something I do with videos, and there again, I'm using green screen. And so what I like to do whenever I go on holiday, I just sort of film the streets and film where I am. And then I can use that footage later when I make a video. Hi, everyone. Now, you've probably wondered where teachers get their ideas from. Well, today, I'm going to show you. We're going to take a field trip. All right, guys, here we are at the Louvre in Paris. Let's go inside and see if we can get some inspiration.
So now we're inside the world's biggest art museum. It shouldn't be too hard to find some inspiration here, especially as there are 35,000 pieces of art. I wonder if you can recognize any of them. Wow, I really like how this artist is using fruit and vegetables to make faces. That gives me an idea. And now it's time for
Mr. Gadbury's art task.
using a piece of fruit or a vegetable. You can place it on a white piece of paper. Using a black pen, you can draw around the piece of fruit and turn it into a picture. If you don't have any fruit or vegetables, you can use any kind of food. But remember, don't waste the food. Simply draw around it and then take a photo and upload it. Have fun, be a risk taker, and I can't wait to see what you come up with.
Okay, just to let you know, all the sound effects there are already on iMovie. So there's no, you don't have to download sound effects or music. There's tons of stuff already there. Okay, so when I first started teaching year one, they had loads of words that they had to memorize. Here they are. And they had to memorize and be able to read all of these by the end of year one. And they were also learning about magic E words. So what I decided to do was to create a story containing all of the first group of sight words. And I put as many magic E words in as I can. So if you're not sure what a magic E word is, say the word cub, and then you put a magic E is cube, cap, cape. And so they would get to watch this video whenever they wanted to and try and read the story. I would then use the same words and create games and different resources based upon the story. So here you go, there are the pictures and there are the words, and if they can read it, they can match up the right picture with the right group of words. I'd also put the words in little books, and those are just photo albums. They're the ones you get free when you get photos developed, and they normally have something like Hello Kitty on the cover. I just cover up the covers with paper and make little books for them they can flick through. Another thing that they love doing is this game that I created where we put all the magic, sorry, not the magic words, the sight words into these milk powder. At the time I had an infant, and so I had a lot of milk powder cans. And so what happens is I would fill them up with the words on the tops of bottles, and the kids would have to read the word before they take a shot. So they just flick with their finger and try and score a goal. And you can keep score on here. But the only way you can get to take a shot is by reading the word correctly. So you can imagine a lot of the boys were very encouraged to learn the words, and they did. So yeah, there you go. Okay, another activity I love doing is something called student workshop. And this is where students have to come up with their own workshop idea, and they're going to teach it to the rest of the class. So they can teach anything that they want to teach. So we had some people teaching beginners ballet, other people teaching chess. Someone else did advanced maths. So you get all kinds of different students with different skills. And so what they have to do is create their own workshop, introduce their task. What's the workshop going to look like? So they have to plan all this. Now, for that week, I wouldn't give them any homework, only to do this so they can really plan out what they're going to need, how long the lesson is going to be, and so on and so on. And at the end, they would do a reflection. How would they improve upon it? How did it go? What did they learn? Did the people pay attention? Did people learn what they wanted to learn? So a great activity. All the students were really enthusiastic about it. And the students could sign up for whichever activity they wanted to do. Okay, draw everything. So I would encourage that. This is connecting the global goals with the learner profile. And this was then World's Largest Lesson, if you've heard of them. They do great resources about the global goals. And so they saw this and asked me to make a resource for them, which was very similar, making connections. If you ever do 12 Days of Twitter, which is quite popular, I like to draw out my answers instead. This is my sketchnoting as well. So I have been doing sketchnoting for a couple of years now. And so, yeah, recently I was asked by the United Nations to do some sketchnoting for them as well. So always share what you do on social media, and you don't know who will see it. So yeah, I use draw everything, and I get my students to draw at the beginning of a unit their ideas. I do a lot of drawing on the board whenever I'm explaining things, even maths, just to make it more interesting and more visual. And here you can see little cartoons to further explain things. Okay, so I just want to talk about things that I would recommend for sketchnoting. Okay, so I recommend using different colors, but different tones of the same color. So I would recommend maybe choosing 2 main colors. So here I've chosen yellow and blue, and then you can use black and any shade of gray. And you can use different shades of yellow, different shades of blue. I'd also suggest using pens that can write in different thicknesses. So I've got an example here. So if you have a look, there we go. It can write in different thicknesses. This is actually supposed for Chinese writing or Chinese calligraphy, but it's a great drawing pen. And we actually, every student in my school, we have given them one of these for drawing, not for Chinese writing. So yes, use squared and dotted paper. We talked about that before. Use different arrows to make things interesting. Just to let you know, all of these pictures are on the Toddle blog post as well. So if you want to have a look at these or copy any of these, you're welcome to do that. Drawing faces. So I've sort of developed a way to draw faces and to help other people to draw faces. And this picture is also on the Toddle blog. But you can see if you draw a face sort of side on like this, you're able to just make them talk to each other or face each other just by moving the eyes. So it's a lot more useful. It's hard to draw faces, but if you're going to learn to do a face, learn to draw them sort of half side on like that. I'm going to go a bit faster because I'm looking at the time and I see we are running out of time. So here's simple instructions on how to draw a face. It's not the only way to draw a face, but a way to draw a face. I call it the U method because you can see the person is sort of made up of a U, the letter U. Okay, and I would always suggest drawing people very simple, drawing things very simple, especially if you're sketchnoting. Here, another thing, and you can also download this, but some very simple instructions about when you do your PYP exhibition or any sort of exhibition or any display. There are certain things that will make it stand out better and look better. And so I always provide this to the year, the final year in primary when they're doing the PYP exhibition. Just things about text, which fonts to use. Obviously, don't use really hard fonts to read, which is a mistake that a lot of children make, and how to space things out, and which colors go well together, and which sort of color combinations to use. Make your own lettering. So I strongly recommend an app called iFont Maker. And these are some of the fonts that I've created using that. Not the one here, but the smaller ones. It's actually really easy to make your own font, and you don't need any sort of prior knowledge or skill. And I'll just go back a little bit. Okay, so basically it will just give you letters, and you just use your finger or your pen, Apple Pen, to draw over the top of them. And then it's so easy, you just upload it to your computer and immediately you're able to type on Word or any other program that's on your computer. And it will have the fonts there for you to use. So it's called iFont Maker. These are some other fonts that I've made, but these are using Adobe Illustrator. Usually when I make a title like this, it takes about an hour, and you can probably see why. Lots of messing around and experimenting and things like that. So yeah, usually my lessons have some sort of fancy title, which I do on Illustrator. Some more fonts that I created. So I do a lot of lessons on crazy lettering with the students. And here are some of the lessons that I've done and the lettering that I've created for those lessons. Okay, and you can create them pretty simply if you're going to use Procreate just by doing layers. So whenever you draw something, draw it underneath. So you do this on one layer, the word create or whatever word you want to put, and then underneath that layer, that's where you do your drawings. And then you just fill in that space with white. So everything else disappears that's behind it. So here's some different ways that you can use lettering, or you could use it in your sketchnoting or in your display boards at school. I know that it's going fast, but obviously I think we have 1 minute left, so I can't really slow it down. Again, I'm sure there are lots of tutorials online which can help you with this. And you can always watch it again and pause it and have a look. Okay, so you're able to stretch things, and you can stretch pictures and move them around. And you can always film your screen as well. So there we go. Different ways of writing create. And 9 ways to become a super creative teacher. Again, okay, let's take a little pause. I know we're going over time. We've only got 2 more minutes of me talking video. Sorry to go over time, everybody.
Well, I see a lot of love coming your way, Chris. A lot of people have been loving the font and lettering idea. Radhika said that you could also use clipping mask for doing this as well. Vaishali says this is easy and excellent. And to everybody who thinks that this is too fast, you will receive the recording via email. It will be on the Toddle website, so you can always look at this again, pause like Chris said, and I'm sure you'll be able to do a wonderful job with this. All right. Yep, Paulina here said that my students will love all of this, and these are such great ideas. They will love all of these, and she can't wait to share this with them. We did have a question about tools that you use with students in an in-person classroom, Chris. If you could share like maybe a few examples of what you give students access to.
Okay, so I teach the younger students. I teach the year ones and year twos, so they're sort of 6 years old and 7 years old. So I don't actually do a lot of, well, I don't do any digital work with them because I feel that they're too young, and I feel that they should be using their hands and getting messy and using clay and all sorts of things. Yeah, I don't do that. I do sometimes. So we have 2 art teachers in my school, and sometimes we do swaps, and I will teach the older students, and the other teacher will teach the younger students. Particularly if it's something like graphic design, then I have a little bit more knowledge on that. So we would just use like very basic drawing programs, usually the ones that are free. So there's even one on your if you use Notes, which is already on the iPad, you can actually draw on that pretty well. So that's one that we would use, yeah. I should also say that sometimes we have done animation with the older students as well. And I like it if they create something physical first, and then they can use, say, maybe iMotion to animate it as well. So I always like it if they start with something physical and then work out how to animate. So I see technology for kids as a way to take things further rather than to just create on, especially the younger students, because I think that those skills are really important to get to know, first of all. Any more questions, or shall I move along? Or?
Yes, I think we can move ahead. Yeah, I don't see any other questions.
Okay. Okay. So number 8, sharing is daring. So I would encourage everyone to share in whatever way they feel comfortable with. So I like to share on a blog, which is artlesson.blog. And all the lessons that I've talked about and many, many more on here. So you're welcome to have a look on there, and you're welcome to use the lessons with your students or adapt them or make them better. So here's a few examples of that. And most of these are lessons that we did during online learning. So there's that machine again that takes us on different field trips, even out of space. That's just Google Maps. And that's my holiday in Holland. And that's the MC Escher Gallery. Share at local events too. There's always local events around you. And you know, just go up on stage and volunteer and share what you're doing. Share, if you write stories, share them, because you never know. I actually, I shared some of my stories, and I've gotten a lot of great feedback from different teachers around the world. And so even two schools actually, they used my videos to create their own plays, and they dressed up as the characters. So there was a school in Barbados that did that, and another school in the Netherlands, and they sent me the videos as well of them dressed up as my characters acting it out in a play, which was just amazing. So really, really important to share things, because you never know. I also like to hold workshops where I show my stories, and my stories sort of, they end, they don't have proper endings, and I sort of encourage people to come up with the ending. So the story will be about a global issue, and then I'll encourage students to come up with an ending for a happy ending. So they're also thinking about how can we solve this global issue. So I encourage other teachers to use the same sort of thing. Again, that's what I based my TEDx talk on. So again, more sharing. And another school in Indonesia have been using these stories as well. So we had a group of teachers from my school, which went all the way to Borneo, and they shared these stories and got other teachers from schools far, far away, and got them to come up with solutions, and so yeah, again, sharing. Finally, last point is don't aim for perfect, aim for very good. So you can spend a lot of time trying to make something perfect. And if you do that, you'll never get anything done, or you'll never have anything that is finished. Or you'll have a few things finished, but they'll never actually be perfect. So it's a really important point is when something's good, stop, go to sleep. Don't spend all hours until the morning doing it and being tired. It's something I learned far too late, but luckily I learned it anyway. So very important tip, please remember this. Don't aim for perfect, aim for very good.